Hi, my name is Justin Woodbury, and this is my story of growing up in a cult and experiencing and surviving from sexual abuse. Like the second that we got in there, she threw me up against the wall and started to French kiss me. I had never even kissed before. So all of a sudden, there's this woman in her mid-30s sticking her tongue down my throat. I just remember panicking and pushing her away and saying, no, please, no. I did not enjoy it. It was not an enjoyable experience. So it went from kissing to feeling to touching, like clothes off, and many reasons. It was really disgusting and dirty. That was when I felt probably the dirtiest I had ever felt. And then with my dad actually sitting down and saying, I've noticed the way Carolyn acts around you and I don't like it. Stay away from her. And my mom rushed into Carolyn's defense and was like, Stan, you're a pervert. Like, how could you say such a thing? She's my friend. You have such a dirty mind and you think everybody thinks dirty like you. So she defended her friend. And my dad's like, I'm just telling you what I see. This woman is after my son and I don't like it. I didn't say a word the entire time. The spring break of my freshman year, I met with my pastor, with preacher, and it was the worst conversation ever. And he scored the guilt. He's like, you weren't a Joseph. You could have ran. So you are responsible for what happened. They confronted her and she denied everything. She's like, what? No, that never happened, which is what she said. And so he said, I already met with Justin. He told me everything. So she broke down crying. She's like, well, it did happen, but Justin was the one that came on to me. He said, there is no consent with a minor. And if you don't tell me exactly what happened right now, I'm going to make you meet with all the deacons and we're going to make you tell us what happened. And so she finally broke down and was like, yeah, it's true. I did it all. It was my fault. I came on to him. I have problems, whatever. I had to meet with her husband and apologize for stealing his wife. And then she had to apologize to my parents as well. And then that was it. I didn't get counseling. It would have made our church look bad if it had gone public. And so they were just, they hid it. They swept it under the rug. The Matthias left the church and started attending another fundamental Baptist church in the area. That happened to them. What happened to me is I started eating excessively, like out of control, gorging myself, binge eating.
A 35-year-old teacher who had sex with a 13-year-old sixth grader sentenced to 18
Mary
days.
Kay Letourneau, the last person you would suspect of being a molester of children.
Billy is now her husband. Then there's their children. Audrey, born while their mother was on trial, and Georgia, born in prison.
Year 2 teacher?
He was one of my students back then. I hardly remember. Of course, I remember his name. And I knew the Falao family.
Billy came from a broken home. His dad was married 5 times and he had 17 brothers and sisters.
So many other people in your situation might have said, this is too hard, I'm going to walk away. You stayed the course.
Yeah. Well, I wanted both of my kids to have both parents under the same roof, something I've never had. So I did it for them. So.
I am Gigi Kilrow. I am a survivor of incest, dating violence, and 2 separate sexual assaults. One of the first challenges I faced is that I lost my mom to cancer when I was only 5 years old. And it's very difficult to lose a parent at any age, but especially when you're a child. And for me, all of the things that I would face in my life, I did not have a mother to help me through all of it. So people have often said, why are you so strong? How did you become so strong? And I said, well, I learned at an early age that the main person that I had to depend on was myself. So for me, the sadness was, being molested by my half-brother at the age of 4. And that is something that I blocked for 50 years. When the memories came up later in my life, they absolutely almost killed me. I started having nightmares. I wet the bed. I didn't want to leave my house. It took a very long time for me to work through that trauma. And that was repressed trauma that I carried in my body. When I was living with my grandmother, I started dating a young man. My grandmother loved him. He was from a very affluent family. It was my first time having attention from the opposite sex. But sadly, in time, he became abusive. For anyone who's been in an abusive relationship, it doesn't happen right away. It happens very slowly and very gradually. And he would say things to me like, you're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid. You might as well stay with me. You'll never amount to anything. And I believed him. I absolutely believed him. And he would punch me. He would kick me. So all of through high school was horrible for me. I just could not wait to get away from him. Emotional abuse can leave just as many scars as physical abuse. I have scars on my left hand where he literally dug his fingernails into me. Those will be with me until the day I die. They're visible. But the emotional abuse, the feeling of never being good enough, I catch myself now because those feelings have transferred for years. Wrong. So I asked my half-brother, now it's just he and I in the room, his wife was not there. I said to him, "Do you think Uncle so-and-so hurt Mom?" To which he replied, "Well, you said incest was okay." And I felt the air leave the room. And then he said, "Well, I figured if Mom found out, she would have cut me up and put me in garbage bags." And when I tell you my world stopped, I made an excuse that I had to get on the road, and I can tell you I don't remember the hours and hours on the road driving home. It is only by the grace of God that I didn't have a car accident. That was the moment right there where he admitted what he did to me. And in the same token, perpetrators will do, you said it was okay. I was a 4-year-old precious little girl, precious innocent child. 4-year-olds don't give consent. When I got home, the first thing I thought of is, I think as human beings, the first need we all have is to feel safe. And you know what? I didn't feel safe. And I didn't know if I was ever going to feel safe again. I literally locked every door in my house. I locked every window. I picked up my cat. I kissed his face 100 times. And then I went into a fetal position on the couch and I didn't move. For me, the experience of the repressed memories, it's like they didn't all come flooding up at once. That's not how it was for me. But it's like I would get a glimpse of something, and it was almost like I was watching it happen. Of all of the things I have been through between, losing my mother and the rape in college, the rape in the workplace, the abusive, relationship, losing my dad, like through all of those things, this was the hardest because your family members are supposed to be the people that you trust, right? Again, it's not the boogeyman. It's not the man chasing you down the alley. It's someone that you know. And, as a 4-year-old child, I should have been able to trust my brother.
When I was between the age of 5.5 and 6, my mother came to my grandmother's house because my grandmother needed to, strangely enough, go to Puerto Rico to help someone with their child who was being molested. And when she left me with my mother, and my mother was an addict. I guess leaving her with some money was temptation. And for some reason, for whatever reason, my father, who I didn't really see often, he just came to see me randomly. And my mom let us hang out for a little while. My earliest memory of him, unfortunately, is that day. I remember sitting in the living room and she said, "Hey, do you want to just take her?" And I remember thinking, what does she mean by that? And he said, "Yeah, sure." And she gave him a bag with my stuff. And then I went to his house and still not, you're 5, you don't understand what's happening. Then I was there with someone who somewhat felt like a complete stranger. Then I spent the night at his house, or I thought I was spending the night. I didn't know that it was a permanent situation. So then after a few days, I remember just feeling very abandoned and confused. And I wasn't sure, did she just not want me? Was there something wrong with me? Did my grandma already have this planned and I just didn't know about it? So many questions. And when you're 5, you don't understand what's going on. So after that, 1 week led to 2 weeks, 2 weeks led to 3 months, and it just ended up becoming my normal. I do know that my grandmother, when she came back from Puerto Rico, tried to get me back from my father. And he pretty much told her, "I'm her biological father. You can try to take me to court, but you're not going to win." And his family was pretty well off enough to fight for me if they wanted to. So my grandmother kind of just had to accept it. And after about 2 to 3 months, which I wasn't aware was a grooming process, but in hindsight, as an adult, once you start to understand what grooming is, you start to think, was he being nice to me because I was his only child? Or was he being nice to me because he was leading into something? I used to sleep in his room with him. And I just remember one day he was wearing basketball shorts and he was laying on the bed on his back. And he asked me to scratch behind his knee. And then he asked me to scratch his thigh. And he wasn't wearing underwear, which I didn't know. I ended up finding out as I was going further. And he kept on saying, "Go further, go further." And I felt something and I immediately felt uncomfortable, but I didn't necessarily know that it was wrong. I just remember freezing and holding my hand. And then he said, "No, grab it." And then I did what he said. Then he just had me jack him off. And I just did that until he finished, and he finished in his shorts. And I just remember thinking, being like, what just happened? Why do I feel so uncomfortable? But for him, he was like, okay, you can go to bed now. And we had been watching a movie together. I don't remember what the movie was. Kind of block that out. I guess that was the beginning. So from there, I remember he started testing his limits. So then he would put his hands in my underwear when I was sleeping. And then there was a time that he would start taking a bath with me all the time. And it's really frustrating to know that there were so many people in that house, which was my aunt, my uncle, my grandmother, and my grandfather, and then my father. And nobody questioned why a 25, 26-year-old man was interested in taking a shower with a child with the door locked. He would always have me sit on his face in the bathtub, and he would perform orals on me. And then I don't remember performing oral on him that much when we would take a bath together. He would be the one doing it to me. That was the first time that I experienced an orgasm. And I think what's really confusing is when you're about 6 years old, it's this amazing feeling, but because of how you get that feeling, you can't. I remember my brain going like a million miles per hour and feeling guilty that I liked it. I felt so gross after the first time. And I just remember he gave me the towel, and then it became a regular thing. And then after he got comfortable doing that, then I do remember there was a few times that he tried to penetrate, lay me on the bed. And the few times that he did, I screamed. It was very painful. And it got to a point that he would try every night, almost every night before bed. And I think he thought if I keep on, she's going to loosen up, or it's going to get easier. She's going to be okay. I don't understand or know why he continued to try. And I used to think, okay, well, I guess this is my life now. This is what my life is going to be, and I have to accept it. We would have like a good day, and then I would think like, okay, I can go in the room and I can go to sleep. And that wasn't the case. Most times when we had a good day, that meant that when it was bedtime, no matter how early I went to bed, no matter if he was out all night because he was also an addict, I would remember that I would lay with my whole body facing the wall, and I remember praying. I can't tell you how many times, please not tonight. I just don't want, it was a good day. Can't we leave it that way? There were nights that he wouldn't be home, and he wouldn't be home till really late. So I would sneak in my grandma and my grandpa's room, and I would lay right in between them. And they were so big and I was so little that there was one time I remember that he came in to get me, and my grandmother said in Spanish, "What are you doing? Just leave her alone. Let her sleep. She's already sleeping." And I wasn't sleeping, but I was the relief that I felt the first day that happened. So I remember like, I'm going to their bed every night that he's not home. And I would. The majority of the time that he would stay out late, I would stay in my grandmother's room. And I don't believe that they knew anything was happening.